Thank you for listening to Comics for Fun and Profit. This is Drew with a special episode of my other podcast that I co-host regularly, and it's Weekly Comic Spotlight over at John Mayo's comic book page. And for those of you who haven't heard it, I wanted to give you a chance to listen to it. It's a standard review show of a Marvel, a DC, and an independent comic each week. So check this out, and if you like it, go over there and subscribe or check out those episodes. They're a lot of fun. So thanks again for listening. Here you go.
Starting us off in DC's Hanna-Barbera line is Exit Stage Left, the Snagglepuss Chronicles #1. This is written by Mark Russell, who did the Flintstones stuff that I think both of us really enjoyed.
Yep.
And I did not find this as good as Flintstones, to be honest, by a noticeable margin.
Yeah, it's a lot, maybe a little slower of a burn, or something's going on. It's not quite as biting and subversive of satire, and it doesn't work as well for me either, at least this first issue.
Yeah, and I'm hoping it's a slow burn thing, because I was wondering if it's a matter of this is just a longer form story than the more done in one kind of Flintstone stuff. And it certainly seems to be setting up a bigger picture thing with the House Committee on Un-American Activities and such. And, you know, I get that. It makes sense. It seems like a timely thing to do now. Snagglepuss is an interesting choice as a character for that kind of a story. Not a bad choice, certainly. But there were a couple of things in this where my mind was always kind of wandering off in some directions other than the main narrative of the story, just because of the nature of this world. It's an anthropomorphic world. Snagglepuss is a playwright. He's married to Lila Lyon, whom I'm not an expert on the Snagglepuss cartoons. I don't remember if she was there or not. And in this, it's kind of, is she really his wife? Is she just playing the part? A little bit of both.
Definitely a beard. She's definitely a beard. Yeah.
Because he's got a gay lover.
Yes.
But I think he's actually married, though. So she's, like you said, the beard in that respect, but they live together, it looked like. Where it got kind of really weird for me was early on when we got the play that he has produced. It's on its final showing or whatnot, and we see a scene or so from it, and we've got one actress, which is his wife, who's a lion, opposite a human, and both are wearing fake noses and ears. And there's a part of it that it kind of makes sense, but it makes me question a lot of things about this world in terms of, are lions and hippos and all these other hounds and all these other kinds of anthropomorphic people second-class citizens? Are they not? Would the whole fake nose and ears to be as if you are an animal-ish human, or whatever they would be called here, isn't that kind of speciesist or something? There was a part of me that saw that, and it's like, isn't that almost like doing like a routine in blackface or something that would be potentially hideously offensive to some people? Or do they just not have that kind of discrimination or whatever in this world? And there were other places that implied that they kind of do have that kind of prejudice or whatnot. It was hard to tell. Yeah,
it did seem like people and animals were living side by side, and so when they were acting like these versions of animals, and so they both had masks. Yeah, and that scene went on a little too long too. I missed why it had to go on so long to hammer the point home. There was a lot of that, and where I thought Flintstones was subtle and made its point with a quick jab and then back out to the story. And this one, I think, is just really mired in it. It's mired in its messaging. You know, there's a lot of social commentary going on, and it's just living in it. And so much so that it feels like there's really not much of a story here. It's all about how awful is society. Isn't society terrible?
Are you saying there's more social commentary here than in Flintstones?
More heavily applied social commentary and less effective, I would think. because there's no spoons full of sugar to get it to you. You know, the story is not as interesting to read as Flintstones was. And then, oh, by the way, you get a really biting satire that adds to it should you choose to enjoy that aspect of it. And whereas this is more, there's an awful lot of social commentary here, and there's a little bit of story. And I don't know if it's just the first issue or not, but it was a little too heavy-handed and applied a little too thick, I thought.
I think for me, it was a little too much setup, not enough payoff. In one or two regards, I felt it was too subtle. And there were one or two things that, you know, about halfway through, I'm like, hey, wait a sec. If you go to the opening page where we're outside the theater, we've got the crowd, we've got the, I guess, dog cameraman. He's the only one that doesn't have pants. Yet if you look in the lineup, there are one or two, like, cat or dog people, they've got pants. Everybody else, like Snagglepuss himself or whatever, is in a bit of a medium shot or whatever. So it's not until a good ways through that we get the next anthropomorphic character from, like, the waist down to realize, wait, in this world, they don't have pants. Which is a cartoon thing, so it's okay. But now that's where my mind starts to question this reality a little as to how does it work, what are the rules of it. And I'm not saying either is right or wrong, but that's one of those where it was inconsistent. Snagglepuss has, you know, fingers and a opposable thumb or whatever, yet the horse police officer just has a hoof. You know, how does he get, like, that envelope of bills or whatever, because presumably he's on the payroll or whatever, on the take. How does he actually pick that up? So there's logistical things that have absolutely nothing to do with the story that were continuing to hang me up. The kind of cameo by Huckleberry Hound was interesting. It didn't really add anything to the story, but that's how I felt about a lot of these things. Things were happening. I didn't feel that they were particularly as social commentary-ish as, say, all of the things on organized religion and stuff in Flintstones, among other things. You know, how organizations like unions form, or the stuff about armies and stuff like that. I felt there was a lot more, and maybe it was just more effective, to your point, but more social commentary in Flintstones in any given issue than I felt we were really getting here.
Well, I mean, let's say that first issue of Flintstones had every single theme that was satirized through the 12 issues, and they were all touched on in that first issue. That wouldn't have been effective because it would have been overload. And that's what I think. We've got a lot about the House Un-American activities here, which is probably going to be a through line for a little while, because it looks like he's going to get called in on that.
Oh yeah.
We got some stuff with the Rosenbergs and the people that are affected, not affected by the real tragedy of these people dying, but of other things, and concerned about televisions. We've got Dorothy Parker, who, you know, had a searing wit and was somebody who inspired Snagglepuss, and as she's aged, she's kept that searing wit, but it's not as appealing anymore. You know, she hasn't really evolved, and there's something interesting there, but it gets lost. It gets a little lost because of all these other things we're bouncing around and doing, and then he's got his secret life that he's off to, and there's just a lot of competing themes in this first issue, and that could be taken a lot of ways. Some people might say there's laying a lot of groundwork for a lot of different ways for this place to go. The story can go in a lot of different directions, and that's great. For me, it was just almost too little of everything and not enough of one thing to really get a sense of what they were trying to say.
Yeah, I guess I took it as they were setting a lot up. Whether that's good or bad is debatable. I didn't see most of those as themes so much as stuff that was happening, because I didn't feel they delved enough on any of them to get them to the level of theme, other than the House Un-American Activities, which seems to be like the through line for at least the first arc. Or
I think Dorothy
maybe
Parker
this is a
will
mini
return.
series.
I think Dorothy Parker will return. I think we'll come back to her again.
Which one was she? She was the writer he had dinner with or whatever?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Algonquin Round Table, and the inspiration for him becoming a playwright.
I think she had gone through the Un-American Activities process already, was my take on that. So I definitely think she's part of that and will return. But I don't know.
I don't think that was her, because there were a couple
she
people.
She was not the one going through it at the time. That was the Rosenbergs.
She had already done it.
From the way she was talking, it's like I've seen this before.
Yeah.
So whether it was literally the Un-American Activity stuff or, I'm sitting this round out kind of a deal, I don't know. But there were a lot of those things where a lot happened, a lot was sort of set up, but I didn't feel there was enough payoff in this issue. Again, this is a mini-series, whereas Flintstones felt like more done in one sort of a thing. And this isn't the Snagglepuss I remember from the cartoons. And I'm not claiming I've got a clear, perfect memory of him. I'll be honest, before I read this, I pulled up YouTube, did a quick search on Snagglepuss just to, okay, this is his voice, this is what he sounds like, kind of a thing. And he's a defined enough character, they were actually able to use him at least once, on the old Whose Line Is It Anyways? With one of the newscast segments, it's like, okay, you're Snagglepuss, and the guy caught the voice of the character. Whereas here, there was nothing about this that even harkened back to either necessarily the mannerisms, the speech pattern, or the character from the cartoon.
No, it was almost as if someone had seen this character and said, "Oh, he has an affect to his voice. Let's expand that to, could he be a Southern gentleman that is a gay playwright? And okay, let's tell a story about him. That's his backstory." And it was almost like they just made these leaps of that. Yeah, because in Flintstones, you're firmly rooted in the Flintstones that you know.
Yes.
This is not the Snagglepuss that you know at all.
But the Snagglepuss character seemed like he was Southern, seemed like he was of culture, not necessarily a playwright or whatever, but had the theatrical bent to him. And be it maybe just the pink coloring or whatever of that cartoon character, there was the is he gay or not at least question. But it felt like here there was
it was all lost on me back in those days. Then it all went over my head.
I was in the same boat, but I think if you look at it now, you could at least see where they were drawing some of these aspects from potentially.
Okay.
I don't think it's, oh my god, he's definitely gay or not, but he had just enough of a lisp to his voice and speech pattern that it's not that he is gay, but he's almost stereotypical gay, if you will. And I think the two are actually fairly different in many respects. With this, it almost felt like they had a story they wanted to tell about the House Un-Americans Activity thing. And, oh, you want to do a Snagglepuss story? Yeah, I can make that work. And I'm not saying that is what happened. It just, it feels like there was I've got a story I want to tell and you've got a character you want used situation going on here.
How do we get him? How do we get the chocolate and the peanut butter and the peanut butter and the chocolate?
Kinda. Yeah, it's like if they really wanted a Yogi Bear story instead, we might have had this, but with Yogi? I don't know.
Well, I don't think this is bad. I think the bar was set high by the Flintstones. I was enjoying that a lot, and it was really working for me. And a surprise, and taking a cartoon character, a children's cartoon that may have aired in prime time, but it was a children's cartoon and made it was an
animated version of the Honeymooners. I don't think it was necessarily aimed at kids. I could be wrong on that. For Flintstones, Snagglepuss definitely.
Yeah, I didn't know any adults that were watching it, but okay.
You weren't watching it back when it was first airing, I think.
Probably not.
I don't think you're old enough for Flintstones.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw it when it actually aired. I think I just saw it where cartoons are shown.
Yes,
which is mostly kid stuff. So, but I don't know where I was going with that. But it's not bad. It just doesn't work on the level that Flintstones worked for me. I think it's quality art. There's quality ideas in here. The writing is solid. It's this particular first issue felt a little flat for me because of I didn't feel it was as focused.
I would agree with that. I felt very much the same way. To your point that Flintstone set a high bar, absolutely. I was a bit trepidatious about Flintstones before reading it, but every issue had some meat on the bone in terms of social commentary and a story and what's going on. And I really enjoyed that. And I was expecting that level here. And I think, and again, I'm hoping it's more that it's a longer form story than more done in one like Flintstones. I felt this was more setup than payoff. It's not that it was shallower, it's that it was not, again, to your point, it wasn't focused. I didn't come out of this thinking, wow, they really, did a riff on this, that, or the other. They covered a lot of ground, a lot happened in here, but not to the sense where I came out of it, wow, this is amazing, or this is crap. It's good, but I was hoping for better, and I felt I consistently got better on Flintstones, which I think is a natural point of comparison, both because it's another Hanna-Barbera property and because it's by the same writer. For me, I want to see where it goes, but I'm going to go with like a B- on this. It's not great, but it's not bad.
Yeah, there were some issues of Prez also written by Mark Russell. And it was I like Prez a lot more than most of my contemporaries did. But there were issues where he got into word that it was getting canceled, and there were some rushing going on.
Yeah.
He was shoving a lot of things in an issue and it didn't work as well. And so some of those issues worked better than others as well. And so that's definitely not the case here. It's issue 1. But I have experienced this with this writer before, just not in the Flintstones.
Yeah, I'm hoping this gets better and that we're getting part or chapter 1 of like a 6-part or however many part story this miniseries is. Whereas again, Flintstones, it was more done in one, and there's just a different tempo to it. So I may have just gone in with the wrong expectation there.
Yeah, I gave it a B- as well. I'm going to stick with it. And I didn't read the Zero issue that was the backup feature in one of those crossovers that they did, and there was a Snagglepuss backup feature in one of the crossovers, and I missed that one. So I might go back and check that out and see if there was something in that kind of set the stage a little bit more. Do you remember which one that was by any chance?
No, until you mentioned it, I'd completely forgotten it existed. And now that you mention it, I'm wondering, which one was that? I know I must have read it.
Yeah, it was like, there was like Suicide Squad crossed over with somebody. And
it might have been the Suicide Squad one, actually.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was not the Elmer Fudd one, because I think it would have really stood out to me that they didn't go anthropomorphic for the Batman Elmer Fudd, whereas
it definitely wasn't that one. No.
Where they did here.
Yeah, so it might have been the Suicide Squad Banana Splits. And there were like these little smaller stories in the backup features. And
one of them had the Jetsons.
Yeah, and that's where the Jetsons launched, yes.
All right.
Yeah, so I'll have to go look that up, I think.
If you do, let me know what you think, because that may be enough for me to go back and reread that. And I don't know, maybe it'll improve my opinion of this, maybe it won't.
Which box is it in?
I have no idea. But I can look that up if I know what issue it is.
Okay, that's cool.
As I'm putting stuff into Comic Collector from Z Collector or whatever, I am putting which box they're in.
Nice.
So I'd have a little digging to go do. That's not to say I can go necessarily get to the box, but, one problem at a time. Is it worth reading? What is it? And then we'll deal with that.
Yeah.
That having been said, shall we move on to our Marvel comic?
Yes.
This is Guardians of the Galaxy number 150. This is part 1 of the return of Adam Warlock, which is, I guess, part of the Infinity Quest story as they've put it on the banner here. This is wrapping up the Guardians of the Galaxy series, because this is the final issue of it, and it kicks off the Infinity Countdown storyline. Adam Warlock is, of course, a key player in the whole Infinity Gem storylines of years gone by, so him coming back makes sense, and Drax and Gamora were members of the Infinity Watch with him, so, there's a little bit of Old Homes Week or whatever. But this is also the final issue of this Guardians of the Galaxy series, so they finish off kind of the Nova Corps versus the Raptors storyline, which pretty much wraps up, but not in, the nicest of conclusions of, oh my god, it's definitely over. I expect we'll see some of these characters on both sides again. I felt we finally got a little bit of good payoff of having the Scott Lang Ant-Man on this team. Brilliant payoff, but he at least does more than, hey, I'm just trying to be away from Earth for a while, which didn't really work for me. I thought it was a bizarre use of the character, given how much they built up his own series, his relationship with his daughter, and other stuff. I don't think they know what to do with the character. The other character I am certain will be back at some point, don't know where, don't know when, don't know how, is going to be that Scott Adsit Nova character. He used to be a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. back in the Deadpool comics a few years back, but transferred off-planet to work with the Nova Corps and I think get away from Deadpool. Didn't totally work out for him. And that character is actually based on an American comedian, actor, writer, which what surprised me is he's not the actor I thought he was. I thought it was going to be the actor who'd actually been a Nova member in Guardians of the Galaxy, the movies. But, hey, whatever. This whole Infinity Countdown thing, I haven't really paid too much attention, but it looks to be yet another quest for the Infinity Gems, stones, small little mountains, or whatever they happen to be now. I got mixed feelings on that. It makes sense to do this storyline with the whole direction the movies are going in, but is it an event thing? Is it not? What's going on? I don't know. If you haven't been reading this series, obviously not a great point to jump in, but it acts as a little bit of a zero issue for, I think, an actual zero issue they're going to have for Infinity Countdown or Infinity Countdown Prime, or I don't know how they're counting up or down or starting the whole thing off. It's definitely, though, doing double duty of wrapping up what's going on with Guardians so they can transition those characters into the Infinity stuff going on. It was good. It was fun for what it was, but there's an aspect of moving chess pieces in setting up the event here, or non-event if it's a non-event, whatever. I didn't feel that it was a great end note for the Guardians of the Galaxy series, I guess is what I'm trying to say there.
No, it definitely wasn't. I was kind of hoping for a little more cinematic feel. I recently watched the second Guardians and was pretty excited about the property. So coming into this, I was kind of hoping for that same, at least kind of sensibility and some of the same characters. And I got a few of them, but it took a while to get to a character that I just seen, and then some of them didn't show up for a while. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a bummer. And I hate to, cause I don't, the books that I'm a longtime reader on, I don't want them to incorporate the cinematic universe into it. But the stuff that I'm casual about and I just want to sample, I want it to be familiar with what I've just seen on the screen. And I know I can't have it both ways.
Well, if they base the movies more on the comic, you can, because then they don't need to change the comic.
True. The artist has a bit of a Drax problem. He draws him as in the Marvel Handbook, he's a 900 pounds or so he's a giant being, and then his height fluctuates through the series or through the pages, and sometimes he's like just a couple inches taller than Star-Lord, and sometimes he towers above everyone. So he probably needs to get some consistency there with that. That being said, that's just a nitpick. It just bothers me a little bit when his size changes so drastically, but that's not a big deal. I thought Rocket Raccoon was fun in his short amount of screen time. I did enjoy the Ant-Man in his rescue attempt. That was really fun, and mm-hmm. I really like the artifact of a little tiny speck and then blowing that up to showing him kicking the guy in the face.
Yeah.
I like that. They can go to that well as often as they want. It really works for me, and it's Lieber-esque and it's Aha-esque, and it really works for me. I like that way of doing things. Most of this other stuff, I don't care about the Warlock, and I don't care about some of this other Infinity stuff. I'm going to go into that movie cold, I think, when we start talking, and I'm not going to be a part of the comic version. I think I'm just going to stick with the cinema version, because it just feels like it's going to be a long, slow slog in the comics, and I don't think I want to play around with that. So I just I read it, but I don't really care about that part.
did you read the Infinity Quest and all the other old stuff?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that was never into that sort of stuff at that time when it was out. Um,
It's great
and
stuff by Starlin, so.
yeah, just not for me.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a time where I didn't like any of the Avengers stuff at all or anything in that vein. So yeah, I just steered clear. And yeah, as a 150, I also was kind of had some expectations that this would be kind of a celebration of the team. Each character would have its time to shine a little bit, and it'd end on a kind of a team go,
or walk off into the sunset at the very least, or something
like that. I had that in my head, and it never really got there. I mean, it was a nice moment with Drax left behind, but that was about as close as we got when he had that moment, and that was kind of nice for him to get a little bit of peace. But other than that, it didn't quite meet the expectations I had, rightly or wrongly.
I can understand that. This is one that is a little bit neither fish nor fowl. It's not really totally an end to the Guardian of the Galaxy series, although it ends it. And it's not really just a kickoff of the new story arc or event or whatever. So it was a little bit of a confused thing there. And they did, 5 issues with the legacy numbering, and then the series ends? I think this is the first end of a legacy numbered title that we've had out of this legacy stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't understand the decision making processes that Marvel makes when it comes to things like this, because they're planning a Guardians 3. I mean, I have no idea why you would not have a Guardians on the shelf all the time when it's one of your hotter properties. It would. I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, you own it, you profit from its sale in a variety of forms. Why would you take it off the shelf for whatever reason? It doesn't make any sense to me. I get the X-Men stuff and Wolverine stuff. I get that if you don't own it, and I get the Fantastic Four thing if you don't own it. I can understand that, but these don't make any sense. They should be out there, and they should be trying to capitalize, whether it works or not. They should be trying to capitalize on the synergy between the different mediums.
I think they're trying to, by doing some Infinity stuff that has maybe some of the Guardians, maybe some of the Avengers and stuff like that. I don't know. But it says something that this issue ends on kind of a reveal, and actually has some pretty interesting Easter eggs on that last page. But it was such kind of a blah issue that really didn't even kind of register on me when I was reading it. It's just, I guess this is over, and I guess it'll be continued elsewhere. Oh, on the next page, it's going into the event. Okay. There was something about the execution on this that was just a little generally lackluster. Not bad, but I think I could have and possibly definitely should have come out of this much more excited for the upcoming event, and I didn't.
Oh, I'm looking at that last page now. I'm looking around the room a little bit.
Yeah.
There are some interesting artifacts there, aren't there?
And so for you too, you didn't pick that up the first time, and now that you look at it,
no,
wait
I glossed
a sec.
right over. I didn't even focus on that part. I was kind of focusing on who the dude was and what his
the
ominous
main part of the reveal, not the other stuff. And it's like, wait a sec. There's more to read or more to pull out of this image. To me, that's something that was ineffective both in the storytelling and a little on the art. And I didn't hate this issue. I liked it, but was a little underwhelmed. And it's one of those that it didn't land the ending of the series. It didn't really do an unbelievable kickoff of the event. But for just a regular sort of issue, it was good. It had some moments, had some good stuff for the Guardians, and moved the story forward. $4.99, a little bit of a heftier price tag than I'd like, but oh well. I think that's just kind of part and parcel of Marvel these days. For me, I'm gonna go with a B minus. Again, what was on the page was good, but it was one of those things that there was a lot of stuff going on serving more than the purpose of just kind of celebrating the end of this series, which I was really hoping it would do better.
Yeah. So it kind of missed the mark on a few of the expectations I had. I have it as a C minus. If you are curious about what it's going to catapult into this Infinity stuff, just pull it off the rack at your local comic shop and flip to that page and take a look there and enjoy those little Easter eggs that I missed.
I'm wondering if they even factor into the event. They may not, but
it's a fun. The artist had fun with that page though.
Yeah. Shall we move on to our other book?
Yes.
This is Quarry's War number 2 of 4. This is part of the hard case crime line over at Titan Comics. I did not pre-order this. I read the press PDFs of these. I say these because I read the first issue as well, so I'd go into this kind of, up to speed. That's just the kind of guy I am. And with that first issue, it's funny because as I was driving home, I was thinking what I really ought to do for this part of the review is talk a little about the first issue, cut over a little about the second issue, cut back to a little over the first issue, back to a little over the second issue, and just keep jumping back and forth that way. Because that's how this story is told.
Oh, through both of the first 2 issues, yes.
Yes. They're jumping at first between July 1972 and July 1969, and then in issue 2, August of each year. And it's literally, the first page has a little of both stories. Then the next page is one part, and then the next page is the other part, and we just keep flipping back and forth. And it's like reading 2 different stories at once, with each constantly interrupting the other. It drove me nuts.
It's not as bad as Batman's, where there were 2 different stories on the same page on the left and the right. I preferred this one.
Or when they do top and bottom sometimes on some comics.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be confusing. I didn't find this one confusing at all, though.
It wasn't so much confusing as unengaging. I had to be keeping track of 2 different things at once, and it's not like there was, or at least maybe there is and I didn't pick it up, a clear difference in the color palette or something like that to remind me from page to page which am I on? And again, press PDF, maybe in print, it's always the left page that's one or the right page on the other or something like that. I don't know. The other thing that kind of bothered me a bit is there's a lot of this, more than I'd care for, that's told via narration, so it's more of an illustrated story than kind of a traditional comic story in places. And it'll be heavy, captions and then a couple of lines of dialogue and then heavy captions or something. And also, this felt like more of a war story. It's about a guy who was in the Army or Marines or whatever at one point and becomes an assassin at another point. And because of the order they're telling the events, constantly flipping back and forth, and the 2 different time frames, it's a little hard for me to keep track of, wait, was he the assassin first and then went into the military first, then an assassin? And it came down to, I just didn't care enough to figure that out. But if there's a crime going on here other than him assassinating people, I didn't really pick up on that. And the Quarry character, the lead guy, I don't find him overly likable or interesting. I don't dislike him, I don't hate him or anything, but there was nothing in these 2 issues that made me think, wow, I want to find out what happens next to this guy.
Yeah, this is a interesting comic based on this whole series of novels on this guy Quarry, and this seems to be the third in the series of novels, so it's one of the earlier ones. And
was it a novel, or is this just set at that point in his history?
It looks like the same cover as number 1, and it's the same title.
Yeah, but I what I'm wondering is that just where number 1 would fit in this timeline? Or is this based on a book?
No, actually, and there's a bit of a spoiler in the synopsis of that third one. So if you flip and look at those little thumbnails of the different novels, it would kind of spoil that for you before the reveal happens.
I guess my question is that saying what happens in this mini-series, and is this mini-series an adaptation of a novel, or is this just where this mini-series would fit in the timeline of the novels that were previously published?
I'm taking it that it's a version of that pulp novel for more.
Interesting. Okay.
Check them out, and it's a way to grease the wheels and get you into these. And for me, it's kind of working. It's kind of made me interested in these little pulpy novels and wanting to check those out. I want to find this. I want to check out the Cinemax movie or show of Quarry. I want to check that out. I don't currently have Cinemax, so I may have to get that through other means. And but I do want to check that out and see how it looks on the screen as well. And it's one of the few types of things that I've really been enjoying the hard case crime stuff. So this whole line has been really enjoyable for me. So it does make me interested in some of the other versions of this. And there seems to be quite an extensive library of this stuff. And it had been off my radar completely. I didn't even know.
Yeah,
that this was a pre-existing property.
Same here.
I do like war comics a lot. And I like crime comics a lot. So you push them together, even if you push them together and they're half and half and they alternate back and forth, you're kind of speaking my language. And I didn't think this disappointed at all. I really liked the main character and how he got from where he started to this new job. And it does seem like it's early on and not quite at the beginning because we're kind of dropped after he's already done a few jobs. But we do kind of see, the foundations of how he became who he became, and that's fun. And to your point, it's possible that this ends and then you pick up that next that actual novel and it kind of picks up where it leaves off. It's quite possible because it is only 4 issues, so it's not a lot of pages to cover that much ground.
While you were talking there, I actually pulled up a browser, went to Goodreads, looked for the Quarry series. There are 14 books, and we've got 14 things listed here on this page of the whole Quarry saga. But what's confusing me is they're listed in a different order on Goodreads in terms of the order they came out. I guess they were told non-sequentially, and this is putting them into sequential order on this.
Yeah, I wondered about that because it didn't put them in like year of release. It put them in these groupings of when he was a broker, whatever the list era is, and then after he retired and they pulled him back in. So that was kind of an interesting way to group those. They were kind of like thematically, I guess. Interesting.
Yeah, and Primary Target, was that renamed to Quarry's Vote? Okay. I'm just trying to, again, correlate the two. Again, it seems like a rich narrative of universe or whatever here, but the storytelling style of the comic here, and as best I can tell, it is not based on one of these novels, but at least not a novel named Quarry's War. How about that? It may be a short story in Quarry's greatest hits, possibly, because that implies it's a...
So there is no Quarry's War pulp novel in your sequence of books.
Not that I'm seeing on Goodreads.
Okay.
But
so then maybe that what they're doing is they're slotting the comic into the sequence of the novels.
And the novels in the order they would have happened for the character, not in the order they were published.
Yeah. How challenging would that be as an author to
not hard.
Tell I guess you know the character better than anybody. You can slot him into any time slot you want to.
They do the same thing on like Star Trek novels and such like that. But the original stuff, Quarry's List, and Quarry's Deal were all back, and Quarry's Cut back in 1976-77. Primary Target, which got renamed to something else, Quarry's Vote, I think.
Now, the very first one, according to Titan, is Quarry.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That one is listed as Quarry 8 in this list.
It's weird.
And
it's weird.
Again, Quarry, just that, was in 1976. There were another few in 76, 77. Primary Target in 1988. Then we jumped to 2003 for Greatest Hits. And then starting in 2006, 2008, 2009, 2011, 14, 15, 16, and then Quarry's Climax, I'm not sure which year. It's one of those things that the thing picked back up as the text page prior to this listing mentions. And it's Max Allan Collins, who's done other comic work. Unless I'm confusing them with somebody else.
Yeah.
And this whole bit of every page jumping between the two timelines, it's one thing if you did it like every chapter of a book, okay, I could deal with that. Or even maybe every other issue like they were doing on Wonder Woman or whatever. Might not like it, but I could deal with it. But I'm only getting a small snippet before I'm jumping back to the other timeline and getting the other snippet. So I don't know how much of it was the interwoven storytelling that just got between me and the story. And there may be other people that love it or whatnot because of this. But this just, it didn't work for me. Clearly there's an audience for this. 14 novels plus the comic series, whatever.
So you've read half of the miniseries and you're not finishing it.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
I was mildly intrigued by the reveal on the last panel or whatever, but not so much so that I felt like continuing. And
do you want the press PDF?
Maybe.
I'll send it to you.
If I do read it, I'm probably going to go back through the thing and do like every other page. Read the 96 or the 1969 era in one go without constantly being interrupted by the 1972 stuff.
Yeah.
Because I'm of the mindset that this constant intercutting is often done, not necessarily here, but elsewhere, to hide weaknesses in a story. And it really got in the way of this between me and the story, and it drove me up the wall.
Yeah, I'm curious what they do after these first 4 issues, if there becomes another volume, or like so many of these other hard case crime, they're kind of a volume, and they're either 3 issues or 4 issues or 5 issues, and they tell their story, and then they go away, and you don't see those characters again. But then there's another noirish style comic in that line that's just solicited. So I'm curious what their long-term plan is for all these. If they're waiting for one to really maybe take off, and then that becomes like maybe Enormity Gold, which would seem to be one of the more popular ones. And maybe that becomes an ongoing, or there never was a plan to do an ongoing. It was always to showcase what is available in the pulp novels. I'm not sure. But I am enjoying these, and this is one of the ones that would go on the really good list for me. I really liked this. I really liked the war stuff. I really liked the hitman, the fledgling hitman, and how he got his start. And this is a character I'd want to read more things about.
Is the Rivers of London part of the hard case crime stuff, or is it just another thing being done by Titan?
It's just another thing being done by Titan.
All right, because that one worked really well for me. This, I am wondering if you're right, if they're kind of, it's like we've got these other things in this imprint. Let's kind of adapt a couple, see if any really hit big, and if so, come back to that, or maybe they're just doing a round robin, and in another few years they'll come back to this. I don't know. But if they do come back to this, I'm likely to maybe sample the press PDF and see if they're doing this constant cross-cutting of stuff. Not for me. I'm going with a D+ on this. I just could not get into the story for any duration for it to really get some momentum because it kept interrupting itself.
Cool. I preferred it much better than the Minky Woodcock that we sampled not so long ago. And this is along the lines of the better hard case crimes that I've enjoyed throughout 2017 and into 2018 now. I gave it an A-, and I would heartily recommend it for folks who are fans of Ed Brubaker, who are fans of any kind of noir crime comics. It would be a really good fit for that.
Cool. I'm glad it worked for you. So this is the first week of releases for 2018. I've read everything that came in my shipment.
Yay! Now, you notice the new Walking Dead price point?
No, actually, I didn't notice. Didn't notice that. I honestly don't pay a whole lot of attention to the price point.
I heard you and TJ talking about it on the trades issue about.
That's right. It's $3.99 now.
Yeah. About Kirkman, maintaining that $2.99, and he has actually moved it up to $3.99, and even the future issues are solicited at $3.99. I don't know if there's plans to ever return, or it's just because he's added creators to keep this thing coming out on time, and he needs a little more money to pay them out of the pot. I'm not sure what the reasoning is. I could send an email to Skybound to find out why, but
it's clearly a money grab. He's greedy. No, I'm kidding. In
But
fairness
I
to
doubt
the
it's for
guy,
him. I doubt it's for him. It's
a
probably
hundred
for the rest of the guys
oh,
that are on
almost
it.
the other 100 people on the masthead are in the credits for the thing. In fairness, it's been 170 some odd, 74 issues or whatever before he did the price hike or whenever he did it. So holding a price point for that long is insane. I'd like it still at the $2.99 price point, but I'm going to be curious to see if it impacts the sales any. Gut feeling is it won't.
Definitely not.
And certainly, he should be paying his people what they're worth, and it's second best ongoing selling title out there. So yeah, but no, I kind of glossed over that when I read the thing.
One of the things that stood out to me is, in the hype surrounding Metal and the excitement over the Doomsday Clock stuff, Batman White Knight kind of fell through the cracks a little bit. I mean, it's still a significant number of people have purchased it, but it didn't get the same push as everything else. And for my money, it's stronger than both of those titles. I really think that Sean Murphy is doing a fantastic job on White Knight. We're halfway through this 8-issue series, and it's really great. Really great, and I really wish the timing would have been a little better for it.
I think they had a hard time pitching this, and I'm not sure how they could have done it better, to be honest, because I agree it's kind of a quiet hit in terms of it's really good. Much, much better than I was expecting. It was one of those, like, do I want to get this? Do I not? When it was in the solicitation cycle. It's not an event, so I don't think it gets the same kind of spotlight that Dark Knight Metal and or Doomsday Clock would, or that it ever could get that. But this is something that has a chance of doing pretty well on the trade side. I think it should be getting good word of mouth. It's certainly great quality stuff. If they keep it going with the quality they're at for the next couple issues, second half of it or whatever, I think it could do really well long term on the book side.
Yeah, and I hope he revisits this. It's really a really great take on Jack Napier and the Joker, and it's fun stuff so far. Hopefully he sticks the landing. I think he will. But then there was the Kurt Busiek take on Batman too, that I think is 2 issues in, and it's really good. But it's not really going to get the attention either. There's too much Batman.
I was going to say, having those both going concurrently, I think, is more of a problem than having it going concurrently with, like, Doomsday Clock or something.
Metal, there's just way too much Metal.
Oh, true, but I guess 2 alternate timeline Batman stories concurrently with White Knight and whatever the other one's called, which I'm reading, but its name escapes me.
Yeah.
I like this better than the Busiek one, but...
Yeah, I like this better. It feels like it could be, right in continuity.
To me, this is an interesting twist on the Batman mythos that kind of makes sense. If I were building out the DC multiverse right now, this would have a spot, as would obviously Injustice and a few of the other things like that. Whereas the Kurt Busiek one, it's a story, but when it's done, I don't know that we would ever need to go back to that world.
Well, with Hyper Time, White Knight could actually be canon, couldn't it?
No, not really.
Why?
The way Hyper Time was originally described is kind of eddies in the time stream, if you will, to get around the fact that Batman was in 2 places at once. Things couldn't currently have happened that way, whatever, but it all kind of dovetails back, and we're still in the same timeline. That's not really how it's being used today, necessarily, because they're diving in different multiversal timelines or whatever. This is not something that could really stand in the current DC universe. It could be a parallel world, certainly, but it couldn't be part of...
Why couldn't this be the evolution of the Joker?
Now, future timeline, kind of future story, possibly, but there's some things they've been revealing in the backstory that are subtle differences with some of these characters that I don't think the White Knight stuff fits the current canon as established.
Does for me.
You tend to be looser on the canon. I'm just going with what's on the page there. And to me, that doesn't make the story any better or worse. I think it plays better as its own thing than trying to dovetail it or cram it into the mainstream continuity. To me, it works better as an alternate timeline because it could then be kind of a cautionary tale for the main Batman or whatever. Or we could wind up with the one of the Jokers, because I guess there's a bunch of them now, whatever, from the mainstream universe, if they were to cross over, go into that world in the future story, and it would be Jack Napier versus the Joker.
And I skipped the signal. I said, that's enough. I'm done. That's enough metal. Just finish this thing already.
This was actually supposed to come out a while back before Metal even started, I believe. This is basically continuing the flow or whatever the story arc for Duke Thomas and him not becoming a Robin. So to me, I don't see this as part of the Dark Knight Metal arc. It's just part of the Batman mythos.
From the pages of Metal.
I don't think it would have had that had it come out when it was originally scheduled, which might have been prior to Metal. I think this is just a marketing tag they put on it because of the delay and when it came out after Metal. And because Duke is the Signal in Metal.
Fun story in Captain America. I think we've said this before, but Mark Waid and Chris Samney, a good team on this title.
And I think we may say that again in the future, I suspect. Because they're a good team on that title.
They're a good team on that title. And yeah, really good stuff. I thought Hawkeye 14 was great, and it's a bummer that didn't find the significant number of eyeballs to keep that thing going. It's with both Hawkeyes in the same book now, it's kind of crackling and going up to another level, and it's really fun.
Yeah, I think it was a little too late. I think they should have had both Hawkeyes in there pretty much the whole time.
I think, it's probably a mistake. Yeah.
That's the kind of book I would have been tempted to go do it a little more expensive, but give it a bigger page count to where maybe 1 month, Kate gets 20 pages and Clint gets 10. Maybe 1 month they split it 50-50. 1 month, more one direction than the other. Maybe another time they're both in the same story, so they get the whole 30 pages or however many.
What didn't work was when Fraction started getting behind and missing deadlines in that volume, and they started going to a different creator doing the Kate stuff for a while, and then bringing back the Clint stuff for a while, and then they got that didn't work. That just derailed it. Don't do that again.
I am continuing to enjoy the story with the Super Sons and the Titans of Tomorrow and stuff. This week it was in Superman.
Yeah.
I really need to go back and find the Titans of Tomorrow storyline that this is pulling characters out of from pre-Flashpoint, just to kind of refresh my memory as to what era those characters were kind of the alternate future from, because they're not of this timeline. But it's fun, and I like those characters. And did you read the X-Men Grand Design number 2?
I started it, and I just checked the page count. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I need to be more awake for this, because I want to be able to enjoy it and not be rushed. So I put it back down. How did it finish for you?
It got to about the point I thought it would, leading up to, but not including the X-Men Giant Size or whatever, where we get the all new. And it was a combination, as I had expected, of what had happened in all of those from X-Men 1 to that point, along with dovetailing in flashback stories as needed.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Did it give you a little pre-taste of what's coming in the next volume?
Next volume, I think they had Jean Grey Phoenix type stuff.
Okay.
And late 2018 is the time frame.
Oh, really? Okay.
This probably takes a little while to put together.
Yeah.
And these came out in rapid succession.
True.
Thanks for listening to John Mayo and I review a DC, a Marvel, and a other publisher's book. We do that each and every week. If you enjoyed that, and check back here. And you can also check out John's podcast, The Weekly Comic Spotlight. Check him out at the comic book page website. Thank you guys for listening. Drew signing off.